He carried himself in a way that told me more than his case file ever could. Shoulders slightly slumped, chin angled down just enough to say, "Don't test me," without needing words. I'd seen that look before, mostly in my own reflection when I was a kid trying to survive things bigger than me. It's the posture of someone who's learned early that the world doesn't care, so you stay braced for the next blow. I was 54 back then, still working for the city's information technology department. Systems analyst. One of those jobs where nobody remembers your birthday, but everyone suddenly knows your number when their screen freezes for 3 seconds. That routine suited me just fine. Everything orderly, contained, predictable. Then came Carla. She sat across from me in a conference room that smelled like cold coffee and disinfectant wipes. Her outfit was plain, practical, the kind people wear when they've stopped pretending to impress anyone. She carried a file so thin it felt like an insult to the word case. Before we continue, please subscribe to stay updated on our latest stories. Garrett, she said, 15, quiet kid, reads nonfiction, keeps to himself. She looked straight at me and added, he doesn't handle unfairness well. Like it was a symptom on a medical chart, something she'd said too many times and watched people ignore. So what's the story? I asked, nodding as if I already understood, when really I just didn't want her thinking I needed to be sold on it. Group homes haven't worked, she said. 2 this year. No violence, just shuts down. There was one fight at school, someone made a joke about psych wards, and he swung. Didn't explain, just went silent. I didn't flinch. I was adopted, I told her. That stopped her for half a second. She'd heard every excuse there was, but that one landed. I don't scare easy, I said, tapping the folder. This? Unknown father, mother with a mental health record, I've seen worse before lunch. She let that hang in the air. You'll have to show up for court hearings, school meetings, and expect a few surprises. City's got potholes, I said. Teenagers have bad days. I can handle both. That made her smirk, not friendly but approving, like I'd passed some kind of quiet test. I picked up the photo paper clipped to the file. It was black and white, faded at the edges, but clear enough. A woman stared back, dark hair hanging across her face, jaw tight, already angry at the camera. She's his mother? I asked. Marina, Carla said. He carries her photo everywhere, like it's his passport. That line hit harder than I let show. What do you need from me right now? I asked. A bed, she said. A door he can close, and a man who doesn't run the first time he pushes back. I nodded. Done. The paperwork was endless. Last page was a release of information with a list of contacts, school liaison, social worker, and a 24-hour crisis number I prayed I'd never have to use. She stood to leave. Tomorrow at 4, he'll come with one duffel bag and that photo. Nothing else. She paused at the door. If you ever need to talk to someone who's been there, your brother Silas, the psychologist. I clenched my jaw. We don't talk much these days. Still, she said, he'd understand the terrain. I nodded like I might call, but I knew I wouldn't. After she left, I stayed staring at that copy of Marina's face until the room felt colder than it should have. Then I slid it back into the folder, tucked it under my arm, and went home. The next day, I got the spare room ready. Not perfect, just livable. Flipped the mattress, fresh sheets, working lamp, door open. That mattered. The photo stayed in the same spot for 4 straight nights, right side of the nightstand, just under the lamp. The angle never changed, like he expected someone to check his work. I never touched it, not even to clean around it. The picture had been folded once, maybe twice, the edges worn soft like cloth, the kind of wear that comes from being held, not stored. I'd catch him glancing at it in the mirror while brushing his teeth, if elbows locked, toothbrush barely moving, eyes focused on the sink, but clearly somewhere else. When he finished, he'd carry it back to his room and set it carefully on the bedspread. Like if anyone couldn't see it, they'd think he'd stolen it. That first week, we didn't talk much. I'd ask simple things. You okay with soup? Or need me to show you how the washer works? He'd just nod or mumble a quiet yeah, barely above a whisper. Never rude. Just sealed tight. It was like every word that came out of his mouth had to go through a courtroom first. I understood that. I'd done the same thing when I got placed in my 3rd foster home at 12. The stay quiet so no one can find your weak spots strategy. The only living thing that got his full attention was Daisy. She trailed after him everywhere, like she'd been waiting for this kid her whole life. If he sat on the floor, she curled beside him. When he walked past, her tail beat the ground in a rhythm that only the two of them seemed to understand. Eventually, she started sleeping outside his door, and I didn't have the heart or reason to move her. That dog had better instincts than most of the caseworkers I'd ever met. Everything held steady until the second Thursday. That's when things snapped. I was doing dishes when I heard the sharp slam of a drawer, followed by a heavy thud. Then came the sound of breathing, fast, panicked, loud enough to carry down the hallway. I dried my hands and headed to his room, keeping my steps even. He was kneeling by the bed, ripping through his duffel bag like it had betrayed him. Clothes everywhere, socks tossed across the room. His back rose and fell like he'd just run a sprint. "It's gone," he said, voice cracking. "The picture." His hands went to his hair, pulling tight before diving back into the bag. "I had it right here." "Let's take a look," I said, kneeling down beside him. "We'll find it, one thing at a time." He didn't reply, just kept tearing through everything, opening zippers like he thought the photo might magically reappear if he moved fast enough. We searched the desk, under the bed, the closet, even behind the baseboard heater. His face had gone pale, fingers twitching. That kind of desperate energy where you know if you do not find it soon, something inside you might snap. When I lifted the mattress, I caught sight of a corner of paper sticking out from between the bed frame and the wall. I reached down and pulled it free. "Got it," I said. He snatched it out of my hand like I just pulled someone from a fire, pressed it flat against his chest, turned away. "I thought I lost her," he said, his voice low, heavy, not breaking but sinking. I didn't say a word, just stood there with my hand on the bed frame, watching his shoulders tremble once before going still. That night, he sat cross-legged on the floor, back to the bed. Daisy curled beside him again, like always. He didn't look at me when he finally spoke. His eyes stayed fixed on the rug. "She used to sing in the car," he said. "Not good, just loud." I leaned against the doorframe and waited. "She made pancakes shaped like stars," he added. "She smelled like that vanilla lotion, the kind in the brown bottle." He stopped there. I didn't press him. That was our unspoken deal. Share what you can. No one gets to demand the rest. Over the next few weeks, we settled into something that almost felt like rhythm. I left for work at 7 sharp. He was always up before then, already dressed, eating cereal or pretending to read at the kitchen table. He never broke rules, didn't mess with the thermostat, always locked the door, kept his shoes lined up neatly by the rack, though I never told him to. The kid had discipline carved into his bones. After school, I'd usually find him on the couch, a thick nonfiction book balanced in his hands. Space exploration, history, science, war. Always real stuff, never fantasy. He didn't ask for help, and I didn't hover. I cooked dinner. He ate in silence. At first, that silence felt heavy, but after a while, it just felt peaceful, like we'd reached a quiet agreement to exist side by side. One night, I came home to find the table already set. 2 plates, 2 forks, 2 glasses of water. Nothing fancy, just ready. Like he was testing me to see what I'd do. "Thanks," I said. He shrugged. Another night, I opened my drawer and found my shirts folded into perfect, square stacks. His doing. I didn't need to ask where he learned it. That kind of precision comes from state care. We weren't family. Not yet. Not close, not even warm, if I'm being honest. But we weren't strangers anymore, either. We lived in that in-between, where neither of us had the nerve to admit we needed anything, but both of us knew that if we kept showing up, something solid might start to grow. Daisy, though, she didn't hesitate. She chose him from day one, slept by his feet, followed him everywhere, even gave him her beat-up tennis ball, a gesture she'd never made toward me. One evening, I walked in to find her with her head resting on his leg while he read a book about plane crashes. Her tail thumped when she saw me. His eyes stayed on the page. "You like dogs?" I asked, grabbing a glass of water. "She's not like other dogs," he said. "How so?" "She doesn't pretend to need more than she does." I didn't respond, just took a sip and walked out. Some lines don't need an answer. He stayed that way, quiet, guarded, but steady. Didn't ask about the future, didn't try to explain himself, just existed beside me, hands resting in his lap, jaw tight, eyes focused on something far away. Then came the call. It was around 10. I was still logged into the municipal system, finishing a traffic data report, when my phone buzzed. Assistant Principal Larkin, voice flat, too practiced. "There's been an incident," he said. "We need you to come in." By the time I pulled into the school parking lot, my identification badge was still hanging around my neck, and that was when I realized I hadn't eaten all day. Garrett was sitting on the bench outside the main office, his knuckles scraped and red, swelling just enough to tell the story before anyone spoke. His hoodie sleeve was pushed halfway up his arm. His eyes weren't empty, but they were far away, focused on something none of us could see. Inside, Assistant Principal Larkin sat behind his desk like a man rehearsing concern for a play. Crisp tie, perfect posture, two open folders placed just right, props for the performance. "We're recommending a 3-day suspension," he said, tone flat and official, "along with a behavioral contract that includes follow-up meetings with our counselor." "What happened?" I asked. He sighed, already sounding tired of me. "There was a comment made during Earth Science. Another student, Dylan Stafford, said something that Garrett found offensive." "What kind of comment?" "I'd rather focus on Garrett's response," he said carefully. I didn't blink. "What did Dylan say?" Larkin hesitated, eyes flicking toward the folder like the answer might crawl out if he stared long enough. "It was about his book. Something about visiting his mother in a psych ward." I turned to the corner where Dylan sat hunched in his jacket, trying to disappear. Stafford, same last name as one of the school's top donors. The man loved ribbon-cutting ceremonies and posting them online like he'd built the schools himself. "You said that?" I asked. Dylan's face went red. "It was just a joke." "You think that makes it better?" "I didn't mean anything by it." "Yeah," I said quietly. "That's the problem." Larkin cleared his throat like we'd strayed off the safe script. "Mr. Haynes, we still have to deal with Garrett's behavior." "I'm not saying he was right to swing," I told him, "but don't stand there and pretend words don't do damage too." Garrett stayed silent through all of it. Not one word. He stared at the carpet like he was willing it to swallow him whole if he just sat still enough. We signed the paperwork, and I walked him past the front desk, across the parking lot, and into the car. Neither of us said a word. The silence between us felt thick, almost solid, like another person sitting in the back seat. He finally spoke once we hit the freeway. "It won't matter," he said, still looking straight ahead. "You'll send me back." My grip tightened on the steering wheel until my knuckles hurt. I didn't answer. Not until we pulled into the driveway. Daisy barked once from the porch, her version of roll call. The wind had that sharp edge of early winter, and the sky was gray enough to trick you into thinking it was evening even though it was barely noon. I shut off the engine but left the keys dangling. "Look at me," I said. He didn't move. I said, "Look at me." Slowly, like it cost him something, he turned his head. "I'm not sending you anywhere," I said. "You threw a punch, you'll face the consequences, but this," I tapped the dashboard. "This is home. You live here. Got that?" His throat moved as he swallowed. His eyes were glossy, not from tears, but from holding everything in. "It's always the joke," he said. And that line, I'd heard it before. From other kids. From the 12-year-old version of myself. You learn the pattern. Someone pushes, you react. Then you get packed up and sent to the next stranger's spare room. "Not this time," I said. "You stay. We'll do the suspension, fix what needs fixing. And if you still want this by spring, we'll talk adoption." I hadn't planned to say it. It just came out clean, certain. No second guessing. He didn't smile or thank me. He just shifted, like someone had loosened a knot inside him. The kind of shift you notice only if you've lived through it yourself. "You mean that?" he asked quietly. "I mean it." The next 3 days were quiet, but it was a different kind of quiet. He didn't hide in his room or lose himself behind a screen. He read 2 books straight through and made an omelet on the second morning that tasted awful but looked perfect. I ate every bite and kept my mouth shut. I met with Larkin and the counselor later that week. We built a plan that didn't feel like punishment but still made him accountable. Garrett would check in twice a week and write reflections, his idea, not mine. Larkin nodded like he'd invented compromise. On the morning Garrett was due back, he stood by the front door with his backpack already slung over his shoulder. He didn't say a word until I reached for my keys. "I want you to hold it," he said. I turned. "Hold what?" "The photo," he said softly. he said softly, just for today. He held it out carefully, fingertips pressed against the edge like it might crumble. You sure? I asked. He nodded. Just in case. I slipped it in the inside pocket of my jacket. He watched to make sure it stayed flat. Daisy jumped up, ready for her usual lap around the porch. As we stepped outside, I glanced at him. Something in his face had shifted. Not full peace, not trust, not yet. But steadier. Like maybe, just maybe, he'd stopped waiting for her to fall out from under him. Garrett was sitting at the kitchen table later that week, a library book open in front of him, when Silas knocked on the door. Daisy barked once, then trotted over like she'd been expecting company. Silas came in with a paper bag that smelled like a bakery at sunrise, still warm bagels inside and his laptop tucked under one arm. Didn't know what kind he liked, Silas said, nodding toward Garrett. So I brought a little of everything. Garrett glanced up, cautious but polite, then looked back down. It wasn't rudeness, it was self-defense, the kind that comes from seeing too many adults come and go without warning. I knew that look. I used to wear it myself when Silas and I were just kids, guessing which foster parent would pack up and vanish next. Silas took a seat across from him, opened his laptop like he belonged there, and laid a napkin on the table. On it, he placed a cinnamon raisin bagel, careful, almost ceremonial. Mind if I take a look at the photo? He asked. Garrett didn't answer right away. His hand went to his pocket, the one where he kept that picture when it wasn't on his nightstand or desk. After a pause, he pulled it out, unfolded it like something sacred, and slid it across the table. Silas picked it up with 2 fingers, held it under the kitchen light, and froze. You see that? He asked, tapping the upper left corner. I leaned in close. Just behind Marina's shoulder, partly hidden by her hair, was a blurry neon sign, a globe shape and the faint curve of some letters. Meridian Loans. Silas said quietly. That's their old logo. They got shut down years ago. Predatory lending, fraud, a full investigation. Only one branch had the full globe with those longitude lines. Where? I asked. Thornhill Avenue, South Side. Building's probably gone now, but I used to volunteer near there. Emmett ran the shelter project. He used to talk about a woman who came around, young mom, mental health struggles, never stayed long, never took supplies. Sound familiar? Something in my chest tightened. Not pain exactly, just pressure. The kind you feel when a missing piece finally starts to click into place. You think it was Marina? I asked. Silas didn't nod, but he didn't have to. Emmett kept photos for an art grant, he said. There's this weird metal sculpture near that spot. A bird, maybe a heron. Bent wing, rusted feathers. If it's in the background, that confirms it. I grabbed my phone, scanned the photo, and opened it in the editor. Zoomed in, adjusted the exposure and contrast, pulling details from the shadows. It took a minute, but then I saw it, near the curb, behind Marina's elbow. Rusted feathers, one wing twisted like it had been hit by a car and left that way. There, I said. That's the damn bird. Silas already had his phone out, fingers moving fast. He sent a text to Emmett, short and straight to the point. We waited in silence, 5 minutes, maybe 10. Garrett said nothing, just stared at the zoomed-in image on my screen like he could pull more truth out of the pixels if he stared hard enough. When Emmett called back, his voice was sharp and sure. I remember her, he said. Might have been Marina. She came to the pantry on Thornhill. Never took food, never stayed long, had a kid, cute little guy. Always asked about dinosaurs. One day they just stopped coming. You still have any records? I asked. No names, he said. We weren't allowed. But when that block got cleared for the new apartments, we sent our open cases to Vera's program. 2 neighborhoods east. If Marina didn't go through the system, she might have ended up there. I thanked him and ended the call. Garrett still hadn't moved. Before sunset, I called Carla. She picked up fast, like she'd been waiting for bad news. If I've got a lead on where they were, I said, who do I talk to now? She didn't even ask how I found the lead. Vera, she said. She runs supported living homes, took a lot of the transfers after Thornhill shut down. I'll reach out and connect you. Garrett got up without a word and walked into the living room. No door slam, no tears, just quiet, the kind that weighs more than shouting ever could. I let him go. Silas stayed another hour. We didn't talk about the photo or Marina again. We just sat on the couch and watched Daisy tear at her rope toy like she had a personal grudge against it. That night, After the house settled and the lights dimmed, Garrett came out of his room. He was holding the picture in one hand. He sat down on the floor across from me, and Daisy climbed into his lap without waiting to be invited, like she already knew the conversation was over, but the healing wasn't. He lifted the photo, thumb tracing the faint outline of the globe in the corner, and met my eyes. "If she's there," he said, "we go. No hesitation, no fear, just certainty." I nodded once. "We go." Garrett sat in the passenger seat beside me, the small notebook resting on his knees. His fingertips lingered on the cheap paper like it might disappear if he blinked too long. He hadn't opened it since we'd left Vera's office. The photo was tucked under the cover, half visible, like it was listening in. The building sat on a tired block, chipped brick, cracked sidewalk, a ramp that had survived too many winters. Vera met us right at the door, no clipboard this time, but that same calm expression that said she'd already run through every possible outcome before we arrived. Inside, the chairs were metal, the cushions thin. No magazines, no soft music, just the hum of the old ceiling lights and carpet that looked like it belonged in a waiting room from another decade. "I want to meet with him first," she said. Her tone wasn't asking permission, just stating the order of things. He deserves a chance to speak for himself. I looked at Garrett. He gave a small nod and followed her down the hall. Didn't look back, didn't need to. For 20 minutes, I sat in the quiet, listening to the buzz of a vending machine and the low hum of fluorescent bulbs. It was the longest we'd ever been in the same building without me knowing what he was doing. When they came back, something had changed. He still carried tension, still guarded, but his whole posture seemed taller, not in height, but in presence. Vera stepped aside and said softly, "There's something else." She crossed to a cabinet, pulled out a clear plastic bin marked with masking tape that read miscellaneous resident items. She opened it and took out a small spiral notebook, worn, edges bent, cover scuffed. In thick black marker across the front were the words, "For my boy." I froze. So did Garrett. The air felt heavier, colder. "She wrote in it?" I asked. "Over time," Vera said, "different pens, different days, some entries months apart. Drawings too, rockets, pancakes, stars, letters that start with, 'Hey, bug.'" Garrett stared at the notebook like it was radioactive. Then slowly he reached for it with both hands and pulled it toward him. He didn't open it right away, just sat there, breathing through his nose, thumbs pressed flat on the cover. Then he opened it and read, quiet, lips moving slightly, eyes scanning like each word mattered more than the last. After a few pages, he looked up. His voice was steady but low. "She remembered me." I didn't say a word. That was his moment. We set up a visit for Saturday. Vera said it would start in the garden. Fewer walls, less noise, more air. "It'll feel more natural that way," she said. "She does better when it doesn't feel official." Then her eyes flicked toward me. "If it goes well, you can bring the dog next time. Sometimes familiarity travels better on 4 legs." I nodded. That sounded like a rule worth keeping. Silas was waiting in the hallway when we left, leaning against the wall with 2 coffees and that quiet, steady look of his. He hadn't told me he was coming. When he saw the notebook in Garrett's hands, he didn't ask a thing, just handed him a cup and said, "You earned that." Garrett didn't drink it, but he held on to it. Outside, the wind had picked up, the last of the storm's leaves still frozen to the curb. As we reached the car, Silas rested a hand on my shoulder, firm brief. "You're doing this right," he said. I nodded, but inside it didn't feel like right. It felt like carrying a glass of something fragile, filled to the rim, trying not to spill a drop. The drive home was quiet again, but this time it wasn't heavy, just careful. Like we both knew silence was the only thing holding the moment together. Garrett sat with the notebook open on his lap. The photo stayed tucked between 2 pages filled with looping handwriting, steady lines written on calm days, maybe medicated ones, maybe lucid ones. I didn't ask. Halfway home, he finally spoke. "If she doesn't know me," he stopped there. The rest hung in the air between us. I didn't rush to fill the gap. Let the silence breathe. Then I said, "Then we help her remember. Or we just let her know you're still here. That counts too." He didn't answer, didn't nod or look up, just kept turning the pages, slow and careful. That's when I saw it. A small drawing in the corner of one page, faint pencil lines of a boy holding a paper star. 3 pancakes shaped like stars, one with a crooked smile drawn in syrup. By the time we turned into the driveway, Daisy was already in the window, tail thumping against the glass. She pawed at it once and disappeared, probably racing toward the front door to meet him like she always did. Garrett stepped out of the car with the notebook tucked firmly under his arm. "You want to leave it inside?" I asked, nodding toward it. "No," he said. "I'll hold it inside the house." He walked straight to the couch and sat down, tucking his feet under himself like he'd been holding that position in his head all the way home. The notebook rested on his knees. He didn't open it, just ran his fingertips slowly over the letters on the cover, tracing them like they held meaning beyond the words. I stood in the kitchen for a moment, watching him. Then I grabbed a pen and started a grocery list. Pancake mix, vanilla extract, syrup. I didn't know if Marina could eat solid food, didn't know if she'd even come to the table. But if she did, we'd be ready. The morning of the visit, Garrett didn't say a word the whole drive. He held the notebook in both hands like it was made of glass. His knees bounced every few seconds, not nervous exactly, just trying to keep his body from falling apart under the weight of it. I didn't speak either. Some silences hold things together better than words ever could. When we pulled into the parking lot, the first thing we saw was the garden. Raised beds framed by weathered planks, a crooked bench painted by residents in bright swirls of blue and yellow, a small sun-shaped wind chime missing half its rays hung by the gate. The air was still, quiet in that soft, human way hospitals never are. Vera met us at the fence. "Today's a good day," she said evenly. "Let's keep it measured." Her eyes scanned Garrett from head to toe, searching for any cracks. Whatever she saw seemed to pass her test. She gave a small nod. We walked together down the mulch path. That's when I saw her. Marina stood by a rosemary bush, hands twisting over each other like she was folding invisible paper. Her hair was shorter now, streaked with gray that caught the light. She looked smaller than I remembered from the photo. Smaller, but not broken. Not today. She didn't move right away, just blinked once, like her body needed time to catch up to her mind. Then, in a quiet, uncertain voice, "Garrett." The word came out soft but full, like it had been waiting in her mouth for years, unsure if it was still allowed. He froze mid-step, one foot planted, the other hovering behind. I saw his chest rise, shallow but steady. He gave a single nod, small, deliberate. Marina stepped closer, raising one trembling hand like she was testing the air around him. Her fingers brushed his cheek, a touch so light it almost didn't happen. "I wrote to you," she said, eyes dropping to the ground. "I didn't know where to send it. I wanted you to have pancakes on Saturdays. I just didn't know how to make that happen anymore." Garrett didn't speak. He reached into his coat, pulled out the notebook, and held it out to her. No hesitation, no explanation. She looked down at the cover. Her mouth opened slightly, like she wanted to ask something, but the words wouldn't form. Then her gaze flicked to Vera, then back to him. "You found it," she whispered. That was when her shoulders dropped. Not all the way, but enough, like she'd been gripping a rope for years and finally loosened her hold. We sat down on the painted bench. I hovered a moment, then sat, then stood again. Couldn't decide where to put myself. There's no handbook for being the man in the middle of something this fragile. Silas lingered by the gate, hands in his pockets, head bowed, giving them room but not distance. He always knew when presence was enough. Marina started to talk, slow, uneven, like she was pulling puzzle pieces out of a box that had been taped shut for too long. She told Garrett about when he was born, how quiet he'd been, how he'd look up at her with wide eyes while she sang in the kitchen. Not good singing, just loud enough to make him hum back. Then her voice shifted. The air in the garden changed with it. "It crept in," she said. "At first it was just nerves, a little fear. Then I started seeing patterns in license plates. Thought the buses were following us." Her hands moved constantly, folding, unfolding, never still. "I stopped eating food I didn't make myself. I left notes under doors, wrote letters that didn't make sense. I thought the men at the pharmacy were tracking us." Her voice cracked once, but she kept going. "I thought if I left, if I got small enough, you'd be safer. I thought I could take the bad with me." Garrett sat completely still. His face didn't move, but his hands gripped the bench so tight his knuckles went white. "I thought the danger was around me," she whispered. "I thought if I disappeared, it couldn't touch you." I could see the words landing in him. Heavy, sharp, permanent. like he was carving them into memory so they couldn't fade. My throat tightened. I looked away, fixing my eyes on the rosemary bush behind her shoulder, trying to breathe past the weight of what I was hearing. And in that stillness, with the wind shifting the leaves and the smell of rosemary thick in the air, it finally felt like the truth had found its way home. She looked like she wanted to melt right into the bench and disappear. Then Garrett spoke, his voice calm but sure. "I've been reading about the brain," he said. "Not the inspirational stuff, the real science." Marina let out a tiny laugh, barely a sound. Garrett told her about school, about Daisy, about how he liked nonfiction because fiction made him uneasy. "Too many made-up rules," he said. "I don't like surprises in writing." He didn't tell her about the fight. Neither did I. Not here. Not on this patch of garden soil with too much truth already in the air. A bell chimed from inside the building, soft, measured, not an ending, just a signal that time had passed. Vera stepped forward, voice low. "Let's stop while it's calm." Marina reached out and brushed Garrett's wrist with her fingertips. "Come back?" she asked. "Yes," he said immediately. No hesitation, no glance toward me, just yes. We walked to the car without talking. Garrett climbed in, buckled his seatbelt, and stared straight ahead like the building was still living in his head. I started the engine, eased out of the lot. A minute later, he said quietly, "She didn't run." He let the words hang there, like they needed to find a place to land. The third visit ended with Marina handing him a paper flower she'd made in group therapy, faded blue, edges streaked with marker, stem bent from use. He didn't say anything, just slipped it between 2 pages of the notebook. By the fourth visit, he'd stopped pulling away when she reached for his hand. That's when Carla showed up at my door with a manila envelope held together by 3 paper clips and a single blue pen. I opened it at the table while Garrett sat across from me, half a sandwich untouched. "If you're sure," she said. Garrett looked at her, then at me. "I'm sure," he said before I could answer. So I said it too. The hearing was set for the last Friday in April. I ironed my only suit. The pants fit tighter than I remembered, but they buttoned. Garrett wore a thrift store blazer from East Grove and picked out the tie himself, dark blue, tiny planets, Saturn right in the center. In the courtroom, Marina sat at the end of our row. Vera stayed beside her, hands folded neatly in her lap. Marina's hair was pulled back with a plastic clip, a little uneven. The judge reviewed the paperwork, asked each of us a few questions. Me, Garrett, Carla. Nothing complicated. Just the kind of questions that make things official. Then the gavel came down with a sharp crack. It sounded like a door closing on a long, restless wind. That was it. We walked out into the sunlight and found a diner 3 blocks away. Red vinyl booths, laminated menus, a waitress who topped off your coffee before you realized it was empty. Garrett ordered pancakes. "Can you make one shaped like a star?" he asked the cook as she passed. She grinned, took the plate, and came back 5 minutes later with a crooked 5-pointed pancake that looked perfectly imperfect. "Closest I could get," she said. "It's perfect," Garrett told her, and meant it. Marina wrapped her hands around her coffee mug, not drinking, just holding it, watching him eat like she wanted to memorize every movement. He asked her something small, her favorite color as a kid, and she answered softly as if it were an exam. I let them talk while I paid the bill. A week later, the school counselor called. "There's a writing contest," she said. "Theme is my definition of home. Just a local thing, small scholarship attached." When I told Garrett, he rolled his eyes, muttering that it was dumb. Then that same night, he sat at the kitchen table and wrote the whole essay in one sitting, 6 paragraphs, no revisions. He didn't let me read it until after he'd submitted it. The last line stayed with me. "Home is the place that keeps your shape, even when you're not in it." A month later, they told him he'd won. The award ceremony was in the school gym, folding chairs, weak coffee, and a microphone that squealed every time someone touched it. I wore my only suit again. Garrett wore the same blazer, this time with a small pin shaped like a star, a gift from Marina the weekend before. She came too, with Vera beside her. They sat near the back. Marina's hair was brushed smooth, her jacket buttoned wrong, skipped the top, fastened the second. I fixed it for her as we walked in. She looked down, then smiled. A small, unfamiliar smile, like I'd handed her something she hadn't realized she'd lost. "Good catch," Vera whispered. I didn't reply, just looked forward. Mr. Keegan read names from the podium in that monotone he saved for announcements and discipline. When he reached Garrett's, he paused for half a second, then said it clearly. Garrett Haynes. I clapped. Not loud, not flashy, just steady enough for him to hear it. Garrett walked up, took the certificate with both hands, and gave a single nod. No speech, no smile, but his eyes searched the crowd until they found Marina and stayed there. That's when I saw it. The tension in Garrett's shoulders finally ease. Just slightly, but enough to notice. 2 rows down sat Dylan, eyes glued to the floor. His father stood in the aisle, lifted an old-fashioned camera, snapped a picture with the flash on, then slipped out before the last award was even announced. I caught it. I always do. People think I miss things, but I don't. Not the details they try to slide past. Out in the parking lot, Marina pulled Garrett into a hug. Not tight, not desperate, just enough to close the space between them. You wrote like you meant it, she said. I did, he replied. She stepped back, careful not to let the moment break under its own weight. Vera stood nearby, hands tucked in her jacket pockets, watching the scene quietly, giving them the dignity of space. As we headed toward the cars, Vera fell into step beside me. Coffee sometime? She asked, tone casual, like she was offering a flyer, not an invitation. Sure, I said. My heart didn't race or skip. It just said okay. The first message hit my inbox the following Monday morning at 7:42. A neighbor, one I only knew well enough to wave at when cutting the grass, had forwarded me a link from one of those neighborhood forums where people argue about trash pickup and slow teenagers. The post was anonymous, of course. No name, no photo. Just a generic handle hiding behind polite venom. There's a student at our school with a mother in a mental facility. How safe is that, really? The timing wasn't coincidence. The night before, I'd posted a photo of Garrett holding his scholarship certificate, Marina and Vera blurred in the background, just visible enough for anyone looking to stir trouble. I didn't reply. I took screenshots. Working in city systems teaches you to see patterns, to tell the difference between noise and intent, to spot digital fingerprints left by people who think hiding behind blank profiles makes them invisible. By lunchtime, I had timestamps, handles, and enough data trails to hand over if it came to that. I didn't chase every thread, but I knew where they all led. I texted Silas. He called within minutes. Don't feed it, he said. Trash wants attention. Then I called Vera. Her response was sharper. Protect your kid. So I split the difference. I filed a report with the city attorney's office, attached screenshots, highlighted the timing, pointed out the connection to Garrett's award post. I also sent an email to the principal asking that the issue of community stigma be addressed publicly at the next school board meeting. That afternoon, I saw the next post, this one without a mask. Dylan's father, Mr. Stafford, real name, real photo. He'd uploaded a shot from the award ceremony, zoomed in on the row of students, but you could see Marina at the edge of the frame, blurry, unaware. The caption read, "Nice to see visiting hours are more flexible these days." He thought he was clever. I printed the post and walked it straight into the principal's office the next morning. Laid it face up on her desk, no folder. No warning. We fix this publicly, I said, or I go to the press. We can talk about the fight, the silence, and how the school handled both. She didn't argue. 2 weeks later, at the board meeting, I spoke third. Didn't name names. Didn't need to. Anyone paying attention already knew. My son threw a punch after being mocked, I said. He served his suspension. He stayed. He worked. He wrote about home and earned a scholarship. And still, grown adults made him a target because of who his mother is. Then I stopped talking and let the silence do what words couldn't. Silas spoke next. He read from a printed sheet, his voice steady as stone. Mental illness is not a character flaw, he said. It's not a contagion. It's not a moral failure. And it's not inherited guilt. He stepped back. Vera took his place, both palms resting flat on the podium. We work with people rebuilding their lives, she said. You'd be surprised how much strength that takes. Some people lift weights. Others wake up every day and decide to keep going. Same muscle. You could feel the room shift. Phones went dark. People leaned forward. A few parents turned their chairs, suddenly aware of where they were. 2 days later, the city attorney called. The anonymous account? A PTA officer. He'd used a burner linked to his work email, the same one tied to the school safety committee. They cited him under the harassment ordinance. He resigned the next day. Quietly. I didn't celebrate. I archived the screenshots and got back to work. That Friday, an email from Mr. Keegan landed in my inbox. Short, formal, but clear. The school will begin anti-stigma programming next quarter. Progress. Slow, messy, but real. They said the district was bringing in an outside consultant to review discipline policies. A memo would go out to staff by Monday. I read the email twice, then dropped it into a new folder I labeled "Don't Lose This." Garrett didn't want to talk about any of it. When I brought it up, he didn't even look up from his book about space. He was sitting on the porch, tossing a tennis ball across the yard while Daisy tore after it like she was trying to make a team that didn't exist. "You don't have to say anything," I told him. "I just want you to know we didn't let it slide." He caught the ball midair, turned it over in his hands. "You spoke up?" he asked. "We did." "For her too?" "Yes," I said, "for both of you." He nodded once. "Good," he said. "About time." Summer rolled in like a window unit with a busted dial. Loud, uneven, but impossible to ignore. Garrett swapped his hoodie for a faded NASA t-shirt and started padding around the house in slides like he'd always lived there. I was halfway through a carton of ice cream when Vera called one humid evening in June. "Marina had a rough morning," she said. Her voice was steady but lower than usual. "New medication hit her too hard, and they ran a fire drill without warning." I sat up straight. "Did she hurt anyone?" "No," Vera said. She panicked. Thought something else was happening. "She's calm now, but we're scaling things back. Keep visits short. Garden only. Same schedule." "Got it," I said. "We'll stick to the plan." That Saturday, Garrett barely said a word through the 20-minute visit. Marina looked exhausted. Her eyes flickered after things that weren't there. Once she reached for his hand, then pulled back before her fingers touched him. On the drive home, he stared out the window and didn't ask to turn on music. That night, he sat on the porch again, the notebook open across his knees. He found something tucked in the back, a folded letter I'd never seen. The paper was yellowed at the creases, dated 5 summers ago. The handwriting was messier, looser. "To the boy who loves rockets," it began. "If I can't see the moon, I still know it's there. And when you look up, know I'm trying to look too, even if I'm somewhere without a window." He didn't say a word when he finished reading, just turned the page over, then over again, like he was trying to feel the time trapped inside it. I stepped outside and sat beside him on the top step. Didn't speak. After a minute, he handed me the letter. I read it once and passed it back. "She kept trying," he said, "not asking, deciding. We still had our scraps of ordinary life. He stayed out too late once with kids from the next street over. Didn't answer his phone. Another time, he bombed a science quiz because he forgot it was test day. When he went quiet, I didn't press. When I got angry, I scrubbed already clean pans. That was our rhythm, one of us drifting, the other waiting, until we found the middle again." In August, he asked if he could volunteer at the library. I signed the permission slip and dropped him off for his first shift. When I picked him up, he smelled like old paper and glue. "A woman checked out a book about beekeeping," he said, grinning a little, "and she told me she's allergic to bees, said she likes reading about things that scare her. You get that?" "I do now," I said. He kept going, 2 afternoons a week in the nonfiction section, mostly shelving, sometimes helping people find books. He started keeping a quiet list of what people borrowed and guessing at their stories. I listened because that's what he needed, someone to hear the pieces without judging how they fit. Around then, an email from Mr. Cap Stafford landed in my inbox, formal, polished, full of phrases like deep regret and sincere apology. It read like it had been drafted by a lawyer with a thesaurus. I didn't respond, just dragged it into a folder called Irrelevant and closed the tab. Meanwhile, coffee with Vera turned into 2 coffees. Then 3. We didn't talk about Garrett much, not directly. We talked about her work, my work, her mother's arthritis, the kind of exhaustion that comes from keeping other people steady while trying not to fall over yourself. She didn't ask for more. Neither did I. That was the point. In early September, Garrett asked if we could do something different for the next visit. Instead of going there, he said, "Can she come here?" I didn't answer right away. "I mean, just for breakfast. Vera can stay." We brought it to her. She cleared it with the staff, wrote out the rules, arrival time, duration, transport, medication log, and signed off. Marina arrived with her hair in a loose braid and a small plastic container of sliced bananas. We made pancakes. She tried to flip one and folded it clean in half. Garrett laughed, just a little, but it was real. Not loud, but enough. Still counts, he told her. Afterward, the three of us sat at the table for a while. Nobody hurried. Nobody pretended this moment would last forever. That night, Garrett came into the kitchen while I was rinsing plates. It's not the same as living with her, he said, but it feels like her. He didn't look at me when he said it, just grabbed a book from the counter and disappeared down the hall. That's how boys like him say big things. Quick, straight, no eye contact. Months later, Garrett stood behind a microphone that looked like it might judge him first. His hands didn't shake this time, not once. He adjusted his notes, cleared his throat, and looked out over the rows of tables. Foundation donors, teachers, parents, two bored kids in clip-on ties. He'd always said reading in public made him feel like a specimen under glass. But he was there anyway. Same thrift store blazer from before, let out at the seams over summer, like still a bit snug, but passable. I wore my same old suit, third time wearing it, still holding together. Vera and Marina sat near the middle. Marina looked steady, her jacket bright, hair brushed, that careful concentration on her face like she was trying to absorb every detail without blinking too much. She held a photo in her lap, fingertips pressed to its corners. Garrett started to read. No rush, no stall, just steady movement through the words, like he'd already walked their path 100 times. Home is the place that keeps your shape even when you're not in it. He said it with the kind of calm that only comes after living every line. When he finished, the applause wasn't loud, but it was real. Not the polite kind. A man from a youth program came up afterward and asked if Garrett might talk to freshmen next semester about stigma and belonging. Garrett said, maybe. I knew that meant yes, just the careful kind. As we headed toward the lobby, Marina caught up and pressed something into my hand. A photo, fresh print, matte finish. Her and Garrett on our porch steps, same shirts from Pancake Day. Daisy in the background, blurry and mid-pant. I thought he should have a better one now, she said. Before I could answer, she turned back to Vera, who was deep in conversation with a woman from the mental health board. Outside, the air was crisp, clean enough to notice, warm enough to leave your jacket open. I reached into my inside pocket and handed Garrett the old photo, the one I'd carried since the suspension, creased, edges worn soft. He looked at it for a second, then took out the new one and held them side by side. I don't need to sleep with it anymore, he said, but I want it close. We dropped Marina off last. Vera stayed to handle paperwork. As we pulled to the curb, Marina hummed quietly, a tune I recognized. She'd written the lyrics once in the notebook, a lullaby from some parking lot long ago. Before stepping out, she turned to Garrett and touched his cheek with 2 fingers, same as that first day in the garden. Next Saturday? She asked. Next Saturday, he said without hesitation. Back home, he went straight to his room. Daisy followed, flopping across his feet like she hadn't seen him in days. He pulled a roll of tape from the drawer, stuck both photos to the side of his bookshelf, old joy, new proof, then opened a book about flight and started reading like it was just another ordinary night. I washed 2 plates and a fork. The house was quiet in that deep, contented way that means everyone's exactly where they belong. I'm 56 now. People still ask why I did it, why I took that kind of risk. They ask like, there's a clean answer. There isn't. The truth shifts with the day, depending on work, on weather, on how much energy I've got left. But this part never changes. A boy showed up with 1 duffel and a photograph, and we built a home around it. We didn't fix everything. Real life doesn't work that way. But we made space for the truth. We shut the door on the people who needed it shut. And we kept the light on long enough for him to see that the room was his. If you were in my place, would you have taken the risk to bring Garrett into your home? Tell me honestly in the comments below. And if this story meant something to you, please like and subscribe. To hear the next story, click the box on the left. And as always, thank you for watching.